What's up, guys? Happy Tuesday. We are live tonight. I'm excited because I have a special guest with us this evening. We'll get to him in a sec. But if you're a subscriber to another conservative commentator, and this is your first time on my channel right here, let me give you the warmest of welcomes. And while you're here, guys, make sure you guys hit that subscribe button, hit that like button. I am already breaking records. We are already breaking records because my man, another conservative commentator, has never done a live stream. So this is his first. So we're breaking a record there. I have never had a live stream that had 5 likes going into it. So, hey, we're off to a great start. Make sure you guys hit that like button as you're coming in. Turn on the notification bell, and let's get ready to have a good time tonight. As the title says, we are 2 young men here to talk about critical race theory, racial tensions, and some other things. But before we do that, let me also say to my subscribers, thank you guys for being here. Thank you for being here on this Tuesday evening. Make sure you guys go to another conservative commentator's channel and subscribe. You guys know the deal. Check out his content. I know you'd enjoy his perspective because at the end of the day, he is just another young conservative man who's talking about truth, life, liberty. He's happy to be an American and he's happy to be a conservative. He wears it with no shame. So make sure you guys go ahead and check out his channel if you already haven't. Tonight's discussion will revolve heavily around critical race theory. We'll try to clearly articulate what critical race theory is. And I think this is really important because there's a lot of people out there who claim that conservatives don't even know what critical race theory is. We are just drinking the Kool-Aid pushed by, the far right conspiracy white supremacists who have infiltrated my mind. They've infiltrated my mind. So I'm just listening and parroting what they say because I am not smart enough to go figure out what critical race theory is on my own. So we're going to talk about what critical race theory is. We will also look at the lie. This one is crazy to me. The lie in the mainstream media that they're just pushing that critical race theory is not currently in schools. They're saying it's not there. Conservatives are creating a straw man. So we're going to dive into that. We're also going to laugh again. This is going to be good. We're going to end the night on this one right here. We're going to end the night laughing at the unequal opportunity video that resurfaced last week that I actually found out it came out around 10 years ago, the original. We'll talk some about Robin DiAngelo. My man, another conservative commentator, read the book, so you don't have to. Although I would tell you to go read the book yourself because knowledge is power. So we're going to get to listen to him speak about Robin DiAngelo because he's actually read the book in its entirety, I believe, White Fragility. And lastly, we're going to analyze, what it means for people like us to die. What I mean by that is you guys saw, I think in Fairfax County, a member of some board over there was talking to a group of people saying, if you're anti-woke, if you're anti-inclusion, if you're anti-this, if you're anti-that, then let them die. So we're going to talk about all of those things. But without any further ado, let me bring my man in, another conservative commentator. Thank you, dude, for being here with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, it's
Feels
awesome.
like I'm on a news show or something like this.
It's good. I'm glad that me and you can be together for your first live stream. And to be honest, man, I stumbled across your channel a little bit on accident. I guess that's how YouTube works. You just kind of find people on accident. And I watched a few of your videos and I was like, oh my goodness, this guy, he's to the point. He's respectful. He's articulating himself the right way. He's representing who he is and what he believes in. So I was really drawn in by, the way you carry yourself and the way you stand up and speak out for conservative values. And I mean, just talking to you over the last, couple weeks, I think we reached out to each other for the first time, I think over a month ago, but just knowing that you're a family guy and you really are saying what you believe. You're not a facade on a YouTube channel. So I'm really happy to be with you tonight. Everybody who's in his in his crowd, in his on his channel, who subscribes to him. Hello, welcome to my channel, Conservative Republic. So before we get started, I just want to ask you, just share a little bit about yourself, before we dive in, a little elevator pitch, if I want to hire you or not.
Sounds good. Well, you already stuck with me with this one, so it's too late for that. Yeah, so I first want to say if I come off a little bit like my voice sounds weird because I'm still a little bit sick, so I apologize for that. But yeah, like you said, the goal of my channel is probably similar to yours, where occasionally I'll do breaking or trending news. If something happens and it seems important enough to talk about, I'll look into it, find out what really happened, and break it down. And I enjoy doing those, but what I really like doing the most is choosing a specific topic and then really jumping into it with fact checks and everything. So as you pointed out, I read White Fragility. This was a little while ago now. Unfortunately, I had to buy the book because I couldn't find it available anywhere. It's such a popular book for some reason that the library would have had me wait 6 months to get it. So I had to spend the $20, and it wasn't worth it. But I like to take topics like that and delve really in depth and then give sources for everything that I say in my videos. So the main thing with me is I try to be as truthful as I can. Like you said, I try to be completely open and outright about what I believe. And then if you disagree with me, that's fine. We can have a discussion. Like, not everyone has to agree with me. I understand that. But as long as you're doing it in good faith, then let's talk about it.
Yeah, I like that. And I could definitely get that vibe when I watch your videos. I really like how you say, and it really comes out to me that when you do a video, it seems like you have you have dove straight into the content. You're wrapping your hands around anything you can to learn more about the content. And I really think that it shows as we look through your videos. A little bit about myself, to those who don't know me. I started a YouTube channel last year because honestly, I saw so much hate towards Donald Trump and the Republican Party. And I was like, man. And at the time, I couldn't tell you what a Republican or a Democrat was. I couldn't tell you the difference between conservative or liberal. I actually shared this piece of information a while ago that my first time voting, I voted for Andrew Gillum to be the Florida governor. And the reason why I did that was because I was around a lot of people of color, and a pervasive thought with the people that I was around was, can a white man serve the black and brown community? That was like one of the main things that stuck with me. And so when I got to the voting booth, I was like, all right, am I going to vote for Gillum or DeSantis? And the deciding factor, bro, was race. So I voted for Andrew Gillum because he was black. And then I noticed that I was in a very liberal environment at my workplace. I had a lot of progressive thinkers at my former church, and I was started clashing with people because I was like, I'm not buying into this white privilege. I'm not buying into this construct of whiteness. I don't even know what that means. And then I dove into what it means, and I'm like, wow, you guys are speaking your own language, because it is its own language. Critical race theory is its own language. So I kind of come to the table with that type of passion. Like, I've experienced something. I went from no knowledge to figuring out, man, I'm a conservative guy. I'm a young conservative man, and I am going to vote for Trump. And it's going to look crazy to everybody around me. My dad was looking at me sideways like, why would you do that? And just, that whole process of, I guess, coming into political philosophy enlightenment, it really struck a interest in me. So my page is really geared towards politics. Obviously, I speak about my faith as well, and just, current events. Like you said, I think our channels are relevant, or will become more relevant if we stick with the times. So I probably should be better at being more general when it comes to making videos, but right now I'm kind of stuck, making very specific videos about current things. So, that's my elevator pitch. Like I said before, thank you guys for being here. If you already haven't, make sure you guys like, comment, share this video, share his video, share my videos. A great place to share these things. If you haven't gotten booted off of YouTube, not YouTube, Facebook, because I talk to people sometimes, they're like, I can't share on Facebook, I got booted. Well, if you're still on Facebook, share our videos there. And we could build a conservative community. And I think that's more of what it's about. I've been doing a lot of researching on building pages and stuff like that. And, everybody wants to focus on the end result, which is success. Oh, I got 100K subscribers, this and that. But I think what me and you are doing is, we're building a foundation to move forward. And we're doing it not for the money. We're doing it because we love it. And if the money comes, hey, great. But right now, I could genuinely say I love doing what we're doing, and I could tell you do as well.
For sure. But don't
Yeah,
get me
yeah,
wrong,
yeah.
100K subscribers would be pretty nice.
That would be awesome.
That would be pretty awesome.
That would be awesome. But you know what? Success is all about the journey. So before we jump into the topics, let me go ahead and shout out some of the comments. Are you able to see the comments on your end?
I actually haven't looked. My phone is elsewhere at the moment.
Oh, okay. That's fine. I'll go through some of the comments. Everybody that's here, I will just go ahead and shout you out. Julie Hall says, woohoo. Thank you, Julie, for being here. Talk Ethic. I hope you show sources from actual CRT literature. We plan on doing that. Vandalay Industries, keep exposing these diabolical and subversive ideology. CRT is extremely racist and corrosive and a danger to our grand republic. I would never read D'Angelo. I've heard reviews from lots of people who have, and I believe she belongs in Gitmo. Most Italian Americans are conservative patriots. She is an anomaly, and she is an anomaly. That's for sure. But she's a rich anomaly. She banked off of that stuff. David Langley, CRT is nothing but Marxist trash. And then Julie Hall says, my best friend / sister was ashamed of me for voting for Trump, but I really couldn't have voted for the houseplant Biden. I voted for a pro-life administration, and that was my key topic. Amen to that. We share that. Me and another conservative commentator, we share that. We are pro-life. We are anti-abortion. And at the end of the day, the Democratic Party is the ones who promotes open murder of children. Uber, what's up, my dude?
I want to jump in real quick.
What'd you say? Go ahead.
This isn't the what we're going to talk about today, but I do want to point out that talking about abortion, the Democrats are recently trying to pass this most recent bill where they exclude the Hyde Amendment. So even though they don't have a majority in the Senate or anything like that, they're trying to push through this bill where they would allow abortions to be paid through federal tax dollars. So just so we're all aware, that's currently happening right now because abortions, according to Democrats, are a right. So we have to pay for them.
Yeah.
So, pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's crazy. And we're not going to talk about this either, but, this is very obvious to those who pay attention. It's crazy how abortion is a right that needs to be funded by the taxpayer, but getting, the shot, the jab of the COVID is, it's not our right. It's now the government's right to decide for us if we are to get vaccinated or not. And that blows my mind that the standard falls so short in that moment. But before we get started, guys, one last call to action to all my people here. If you already haven't, make sure you subscribe to another conservative commentators channel. And one last thing before I think I just said one last thing, but now one last thing. I would encourage everybody to read the resources. Some people say, I don't want to spend money on that. I don't want to buy Robin DiAngelo. I don't want to buy Ibram X. Kendi. I didn't necessarily want to buy the Critical Race Theory and Introduction book, but I was like, you know what? If I go read it for myself, then I know what it says for myself. So I think there is a there's two sides to the coin there. If you decide to invest in reading fragility, you're probably going to think it sucks if you're a conservative,
It
but
does suck.
you learn your brain expands like you did. So that's great. I want to start off topic number one. We're going to have 5 topics, and we are going to be out of here by 10 o'clock Eastern, because I have a family, you have a family, and we both have promised our wives. So topic number one,
Can't break that
critical
promise.
race theory. Right? Critical race theory. We just let's go ahead and answer this question up front. What is critical race theory? And I'll let you get a swing at it first. But after all the reading you've done, research you've done, time you've spent thinking about it, what is critical race theory? Either in your own words, or feel free to just read it word for word from any literature that you have been studying.
Yeah, thank you. So I think it's pretty important to recognize what it is and what it isn't. That critical race theory is effectively looking at policies and structures and everything first and foremost through the prism of race. It's looking at everything as if race were like the number one issue. And I think you did a really good job in, I think it was your most recent video, reading from an introduction like critical race theory by Kimberly Crenshaw and all of those real original critical race theorists talking about the basic tenets of critical race theory. But it's effectively just everything's about power dynamics. So it comes from critical theory, which is a straight up Marxist ideology, talking about how everything is about power imbalances, those in charge, those below. And then critical race theory just takes race and throws it into that and says that there are still power dynamics, but race is a very large factor in that, which is why we hear things like white privilege, and why there are some people who think that people of color just can't be racist. That's impossible for them because they have no
Right.
power. So, which obviously makes no sense. So critical race theory, in like what I've seen from the literature, I haven't completely read the introduction book that you talked about, but I did read a good amount on Google Book for free. So that was nice.
Yep.
Didn't have to pay for it. But yeah, the same basic things. Like they talk about microaggressions. They talk about all of these things that aren't really that mainstream or big things, but that currently is being blown up as if it were the end of the world. And they give one example of a teacher. This is like one of the very first pages, a teacher asking the students where their family is from. And that is a microaggression because apparently one of the children, their parents are illegal immigrants.
Yeah, I
and
remember
so
reading that.
if they tell the teacher where their parent is from, they could be, kicked out of the country. So that's an example of a microaggression that the real original critical race theorists think that you shouldn't do. And if you can't even ask students where their parents are from, what's the point of teaching? So like it's completely ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, when I read that section, I could identify, because we've all been in school where maybe we've had anxieties or things like that based on what the teacher is saying or what the teacher is about to ask us. So I thought that was normal. I think that's normal that, okay, maybe an immigrant child might have some sort of anxiety when that question is posed to them. Like, that experience is real, but is it true to call that a microaggression from the teacher? Like, that's to me is where the disconnect happens, because when they do that, they call that a form of racism. So when I look at that scenario, I'm like, okay, yeah, the little girl or little boy had anxieties, but are we going to sit here and say that the teacher asking a simple question is also a form of racism? And that's what critical race theory, everything's racist. And I know that sounds very dumbed down, but it's like, if you read the first parts of critical race theory and introduction by Richard Delgado and Gene Stefancic, it talks about regular interactions. I mean, it could be as simple as me being a merchant at, a grocery store, and then you being my cashier. And then when I go to check out, I hand you the money, and I give you a, fairly good, decent greeting, and you don't respond, you don't reciprocate that same level of like affirmation. And through the lens of race, which is what critical race theory looks at the world through, they would consider that a microaggression. They would consider that, hey, you as a white cashier didn't reciprocate that same level of affirmation in that interaction, probably because you're racist or there's something wrong there. So, when I think about what critical race theory, I would agree with what you said, and I would just kind of, in my own words, say that critical race theory, it's a framework to interpret society, and we're using the lens of race to focus on everything. So first and foremost, you have to take off your color blindness goggles, and you have to look at race first and foremost. So instead of being colorblind, which is a view that critical race theory rejects, critical race theory wants to put race front and center. So when it comes to policy, when it comes to social relationships, workplace environment, basically anywhere that there's a human interaction, they want race to be acknowledged and used to make decisions. So that's, in my own words, that's how I view critical race theory. I think a good piece of literature that both of us have read, um, I actually bought the book on Audible. So I read the free version like you did right here on Google Books. And I was like, you know what? Let me go ahead and buy it on Audible, because I listen to a lot of books on Audible because I process things a lot faster when I'm driving around, listening. So I read this part, and I thought it was good to look at it. And so I want to read the first paragraph, and I'll let you, once I get done, just interject some thoughts, reactions, any further commentary. Let me see if I could zoom in a little bit. Are you able to see it fairly well on the screen? Should I zoom
Yeah, I
in?
can see it. Yeah, I can read that.
All right, all right, so this is straight from, what's the saying? The horse's mouth. So, what is critical race theory? The critical race theory movement is a collection of activists and scholars interested in studying and transforming the relationship among race, racism, and power. The movement considers many of the same issues that conventional civil rights and ethnic studies discourses take up, but places them in a broader perspective that includes economics, history, context, group and self interest, and even feelings and the unconscious. So that's a mouthful right there. Unlike traditional civil rights, which stresses incrementalism and step by step progress, critical race theory questions the very foundations of the liberal order, including equality theory, legal reasoning, Enlightenment rationalism, and neutral principles of constitutional law. So that is the literature version of what the heck is this thing called critical race theory. When you see that and you read that and you sit with it, what are some of the things that you take away from just actual critical race theorists telling us what critical race theory is?
So it's really interesting because hearing that, it basically just means everything is racist, which I
Mhm.
understand a lot of people think is just a Republican talking point, and
Mhm.
we certainly shouldn't abuse it. But basically, in that context, everything is racist. And I've been, as I think you've mentioned, I've been reading through also How to Be an Anti-Racist, which I got from the library, so I didn't buy this one, saved me money. Um, and he's basically going around saying that everything is racist or linked to racism. Specifically, I just got to a chapter about sexuality, so I'm in for a treat here, I guess.
Oh wow.
But he says, this is just reading directly from the book, saying that homophobia cannot be separated from racism. And then in the entire previous chapter is about how capitalism is intricately linked with racism. You can't have the one without the other. So
Mhm.
it's just a way to say that basically everything that they don't like is an example of racism. And if you truly believe that society as a whole is a racist and a literal white supremacist society, which Robin DiAngelo says multiple times in her book, then the only thing you can do is to tear it all down, because you can't fix a white supremacist society, right? So their goal, it's not really even to fix the system, it's to make it completely different and to like basically break it down and try to build it back up, but with race being the central idea.
Yeah.
I think that's a danger. I mean, race is, to be clear, to be fair here, I'm not saying we ignore race, and race is certainly an important aspect of society, but not everything should be looked through the prism of race. Race is not central to everything, but that's essentially what critical race theory is trying to do.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think that analysis of CRT hits the nail on the head, because at the end of the day, like you said, what they showed us in that short introduction is they used a lot of descriptive words. They named systems, the liberal order. Okay, they want to dismantle everything. And you know, one of the things that I started learning about CRT when I was identifying these buzzwords. Like I had friends that were like, "Oh, we got to dismantle whiteness," and I was like, "What does that even mean? What do you mean we need to dismantle whiteness? What are you talking about?" And you know, they would explain to me exactly what you just said. Well, all of America's racist and it's all about power, and white people have all the power. But they would always caveat that, man, with, well, that doesn't mean black people can't succeed. That doesn't mean people like you can't succeed. It just means that we have a less chance of succeeding, or things come easier to white people. Things are given to white people more based on the societies. And we're going to get into this piece of the literature. They say white over color ascendancy, which is a beautiful, I mean, the language, the lingo is amazing. I really love the way they write. But that's a fancy way of saying white privilege. I mean, white over color ascendancy is the same as saying, yeah, it's white privilege. This society privileges white people over everybody else. And you know, one of my takeaways, I have many, but one of them is I feel like they're so stuck in the past. They're so stuck, like they speak like it's 1958. I mean, pick a year, pick any year that's not 2021. Like they're stuck like way back there. Um, and they pull from like individual circumstances of racism, and they blow it out of proportion. Real quick, you know, assertion is that I personally find this fascinating, how George Floyd and Derek Chauvin, that incident, was immediately deemed racist. Like it was, oh, that's racist. Look at this. I had a pastor who made a video in response to this, and he said flat out, it's pretty clear to us now that the problem is racism. And when he said that so directly and so straightforward, I was like, you know, I think it's bad. I think this looks bad. You know, my thoughts about that whole situation evolved over time, but initially when it happened, I was like, okay, it's bad. But he went straight for the jugular. This is racism. And if you look at the world the way critical race theory tells you to look at the world, everything's racist. So, you know, I think that, like you said, it's dangerous to look at the world through that lens, because it's literally racism. And I know that's another talking point. I was listening to Kimberly Crenshaw and Joy Reid talk about this, and she was saying, oh yeah, this has been a trick that Republicans and conservatives have done before. They say that this type of rhetoric, this type of this movement is anti-white. So they've done this before, and this is just like that. If you believe this is an anti-white piece of literature, then you're falling in the same category as the people who opposed Reconstruction.
Mhm.
So I want to pull up. I'm going to pull up. I'm in the process of pulling up the basic tenets of CRT because I think this part of the book, and I've talked about this before, gives us a lot of bang for our buck. Um, when we
So I
when we
do want to.
actually
One thing you said that I agree with completely is that they're stuck in the past.
yeah.
It's very common for them to bring up an issue like slavery, and I'm not going to pretend that there aren't still effects of slavery. There certainly are, but they bring
Mhm.
up something like that, and then they fast forward 120 years, and they say something like, as Ibram Kendi does, literally in his book, that the slave era remains, and he brings that up because apparently there are hollow cries of race pride drowning out the cries of the sexually assaulted. So he brings up then Trump and Brett Kavanaugh as sexual assaulters, and that somehow proves that the slave era still remains or something like that. So like the idea is that there was this horrific racism in the past, and they believe that it hasn't gone away. It's just become more subtle. And that is something that Robin DiAngelo says in her book, that racism hasn't decreased, it's just become a more subtle racism, which if you think that America today is in any way as racist as it was 60 years ago, you don't know what you're talking about. That's insane. You can't say that.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would piggyback off of that. And I remember talking to a friend, and because I was around a lot of people who thought like this. And one of the things that he would tell me, because he was very astute in critical race theory, which is the only reason why I even decided to be interested in it, was what you just said. He was like, "Oh yeah, racism, all it's done is evolved. It has evolved. It has changed form. It's gone from Jim Crow to microaggression. It's gone from slavery to all of the disparities that we see." And that's another thing that critical race theory builds itself on. One, a huge assumption that we're about to talk about. And then two, they act as if disparity can solely be concluded. The reason for disparity is solely because of racism. Like, it's like if you talk about the family unit breaking down, no, that's just a white conservative thought. That's not part of the problem. If you talk about the failing schools, well, it's never the students' faults. It's never, the black politicians who are in Baltimore. It's somehow still related to white supremacy. And it's like, man, how are all of these things so incognito racist just because there's disparate impact? So I thought that was a really good point you brought up, that they're stuck in the past. And if you are one of those people who, like, did you see that tweet from what's her name, Representative Cori Bush, where she said on July 4th?
Did not.
Okay, she said something to the effect of, when they say America's free, or we're free, they're not talking about black
Oh,
people. Black people still
yeah.
aren't
No,
free. You
I
remember that?
remember that.
I did a video
Mhm.
on that, and I can't remember her exact tweet, but I'm like, man, you are stuck in the past. Like, I went downtown. I live in downtown Tampa. Well, I don't live in downtown Tampa, but I went to downtown Tampa, and for a July 4th thing, and I saw plenty of black people out there. I saw plenty of people who look like me out there. We were out on the river waiting for the fireworks to go up, and it was like, you're really going to sit here and tell me that we're not free? Cuz when they say black, they also mean brown. Like like, okay, I fit into the I'm oppressed. I'm not free. But I just don't buy into that. But jumping into the literature, and we'll wrap up this part of the live stream about critical race theory. I think it's really important for everybody to know a couple basics of critical race theory, what generally CRT teaches and believes. And here is the assumption. So we're only going to go over the first two, but basic tenets of critical race theory. What do critical race theorists believe? Probably not every writer would subscribe to every tenet set out in this book, but many would agree on the following propositions. First, racism is normal, not aberrational, normal science, the usual way society does business, the common, everyday experience of most people of color in this country. Second, most would agree that our system of white over color ascendancy, aka white privilege, serves important purposes, both psychic and material, for the dominant group. So those are two straightforward tenets. And I believe that this is the assumption that they build their whole worldview on, is that racism is normal science. It's the usual way society does business. It's common. Like you said very directly, it's just there. I mean, everything's racist, and they say that way more with much better words, and it sounds a lot better when they write. But I pull away, everything's racist. What do you think about those tenets?
Yeah, I think it's interesting when they say that racism is ordinary. The way D'Angelo puts it in her book is that racism is the norm, not the aberration, which is basically quoting this almost directly, which I would agree is correct for the vast majority of human history, that racism was more the norm than the aberration. But in America today, I don't see how you can make that claim. Well, I do.
Yeah.
If you say that microaggressions and everything else is racist, then it's easy to make the claim, but it's not really backed in anything. And that's one thing to point out. That's not saying racism doesn't exist. And I hate when liberals try and take that and say, oh, if you oppose CRT, then you don't think racism exists, or you don't want to teach history or any of this. That's not what it is. It's to say that racism as an everyday normal occurrence, I don't buy that. I don't think the data supports that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I would agree. I also think, like, this term white privilege, it's like, okay, I was thinking about this today in the car. There used to be a such thing as white privilege. Like, okay, that used to be real. Jim Crow laws were white privilege. We've all I went to public school. We've all read the books, saw the movies of the black person going around back. I mean, those are examples of white privilege. But when I think about what they mean by white privilege today, it's basically, there's this invisible force that is called whiteness and white supremacy that just grants everybody who has white skin some sort of favor in society over people that don't have white skin. And I'm like, man, I mean, I understand that our history is jacked up. I understand that America fell short many times. I understand that there are woes and sins in the past. But at what point in time are we going to move forward and stop looking at situations and immediately saying, oh, boom, racism? Rayshard Brooks, oh, he got shot running away from the cops after he beat them, after he stole their taser, after he was trying to deploy the taser on him, on the police officer. Then he got shot. Why is that? How is that racist again? So I think, like you said, I think it's ridiculous, the claim that people push. And I don't find it surprising that the Democratic Party is running on. I read their platform, before the election, and it was steeped with social justice. It's like paragraph 1, social justice; paragraph 2, equity; paragraph, like, it was like bum, 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 bum. Everything is about a racial reckoning. And I mean, I think at some point people have to say, what are we really going, like, what does critical race theory, which they can't really articulate, when do you know racism has been eradicated enough for you to be satisfied? Like, what statistic is going to pop up, like, oh, the disparity between white college graduates and black college graduates leveled out a little bit, therefore we know this anti-racism stuff is working? Like, it's so open-ended to me, which is another reason why I reject it, is because it's like, okay, will it ever stop? Will you ever stop with the grievances? And if there's a real grievance there, okay. But if all you're going to do is point to the fact that there is some power dynamic out there, and your only piece of evidence that Derek Chauvin is a racist is he's white, I don't buy that. And I think it's crazy how we went through a whole trial. I don't know how closely you followed that trial, but there was none, zilch evidence that lawyers brought up that even entertained race. The evidence had nothing to do with race. Like, the witnesses didn't talk about race. And yet people want to say after that's been adjudicated, oh, it's still race. And I'm like, man, at what point are we going to bring in like objective truth anymore? But as you know, critical race theory, they scoff at objectivity, because that's just your white man truth. That's not my truth.
Yeah, and this is somewhat related, but
Go ahead.
It's a bit of a pet peeve of mine when someone says something like "live your truth."
Yeah.
That's not a thing. Like, you can have your opinions, you can have your feelings, that's fine, but there is not a your truth and a my truth. And if you really believe there is, then we can't come to any understanding or common ground. Like, if we believe in completely different things and we're both convinced that we have the truth, and it just doesn't make any sense. It's like
So a little, because I've been going back and forth with this gentleman messaging talk etic. And one of the things he says is the wealth gap closing means racism has been eradicated enough. And, when I think about wealth, I think about what produces wealth and then what hinders wealth. And to me, when people talk etic, it's as if they think that like the only force out there that will stop wealth being created is racism and discrimination. Like, that's the sole number one thing that is going to stop racism. Like, if that wasn't there, then wealth would be abounding all the more, as if that's the only variable to gaining or losing wealth, or never gaining wealth. So I like to look at comments like that and just bring, the other pieces to the puzzle, which sound, I guess they sound boring, but when I think about wealth, I think about long term. And I know Black people were shut out from building wealth in the past, yes, but at what point in time are we going to say, as a Black and brown person, it is now my turn to do what I have to do to gain the skills I need to gain to build wealth long term? What are the decisions that people that build wealth execute? What are all the things that generate wealth? And I've read, probably not going to find this surprising, but I read a lot of Thomas Sowell, and a concept he talks about and other people talk about is what's the term? It's called human capital, which is a very lovely way of saying skills. Do you have the skills? Do you have the skills to be a competitive member in the marketplace? Like, what skills do you have? What skills are you working to have? How are you growing to be a competitor in this capitalist society? So when I look at comments like Talk Etic, and he says the wealth gap closing means racism has been eradicated, I mean, I just think, well, how is racism the only variable you consider for the wealth gap either being closed or not closed? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, and that's actually a point I'd like to talk about too.
Okay.
So I know I'm quoting D'Angelo a lot, but
no, that's fine, dude.
So she actually makes a point about that. So she is paraphrasing Ibram Kendi's book, but what she says is that if we truly believe that all humans are equal, then disparity in condition can only be the result of systemic discrimination. And that is a bunch of nonsense. That is not even remotely close. Like there are plenty of other reasons for disparities in condition. If we're talking specifically about income disparity, it's entirely possible that race could play a role. The problem is with people like Robin DiAngelo, they don't say that that's acceptable. As a matter of fact, she says later in her book that if you try to bring up other reasons why these disparities exist, that's just an example of racism. To them, the only, and I can quote you that directly too if you want. To them,
Please
the
do.
only reason there is disparities is because of discrimination and racism. But one of my initial pushbacks on that is if you actually do the research, you can find out that firstborn children tend to earn more than all of the siblings after them. And every successive sibling earns less on average than the one before them. Does that mean there's discrimination against siblings like the seventh or eighth sibling just because they earn less? No, there are various other reasons for that. So just because there is a disparity in some sort of condition doesn't necessarily mean there was discrimination. There are plenty of other examples and reasons why. So I think I just think it's a pretty common thing. And if you want to show me the data and argue that this much of the disparity comes from racism, we can talk about it. But if you just say disparity exists, that means racism, I think you need to look a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
Oh, I think you lost your video for a sec.
Yeah, I did. I'm gonna have to transition to my webcam because my Sony just overheated, but that's all good.
I actually have this is probably going to be the last Robin DiAngelo quote, but talking about what I just said, she says that whites enact racism while maintaining a positive self-image in many ways, including attributing inequality between whites and people of color to causes other than racism. So unless you accept that any inequality between races is the result specifically and only of racism, then you are just enacting racism and being more racist.
Yeah. And that is so just deceptive. And so it's like I'm going to accuse you of something and I'm going to give you no way to advocate for your own innocence.
100%.
It's crazy.
That's what white fragility is. Like if you agree with her, then that means you're racist. If you disagree, you're just a white guy with a fragile ego, white fragility, and you're still racist. So there's no way to not be racist if you're white in that mind view.
Yeah, that's insane. That's crazy. Last thing I'll say about this topic, and then we'll move on to the next one. When we talk about disparities, right? Contrary to the study that the firstborn is, I guess, the most makes the most money as far as income. A little bit of, I guess, what they would say anecdotal evidence, because my story doesn't fit that, is I'm the secondborn. And the way that the money, if we were to diagram me and my brothers, out of us three, my oldest brother makes the least amount of money. I'm in second place, and our youngest brother makes the most money. And we grew up with both parents, mom, dad, full-time working, hardworking people. They taught us the same things. It's not like they taught him and me and my older brother something different. It's like they taught us the same things. It's just what I saw was in my own personal life was I had different interests and I had different aspirations that led me to making less money than my brother. You know, my brother decided to be a male. I mean, a male, duh. He decided to be a nurse, a male nurse. He didn't decide to. That's hilarious.
Well, I mean,
in today's day and age, I had a biological sister, and then she chose to be my brother, so I had to affirm it. No, my younger brother decided to go to nursing school. So I'm like, okay, like he makes more money than me. He's a young male nurse and he has more profitable skills than me. Does that mean discrimination was involved? Obviously not. Our parents didn't, raise us and discriminate against me and, encourage my younger brother to prosper. But I really like just how we cover that topic. If I don't say so myself, I want to, for the sake of time, move on to the next subject because we took a lot of time there, but it was well worth it.
Worth
So
it.
now that we've kind of talked about critical race theory, you know, this whole lie, like, oh, critical race theory is not even in schools. It's not even in schools. I want to show you guys um this whole thing. It was Kimberly Crenshaw, who is a critical race theorist, on Joy Reid's show from MSNBC. And it's a lie. I'm going to show you this video, and then I'm going to show you a TikTok video about a teacher talking about critical race theory. But here is their claim, the left's claim. Liberals like, what's her name, Joy Reid, this is their claim. Take a look at this.
Largest teachers union says it supports teaching critical race theory in public schools.
Parents are fighting with school boards in cities and towns across the country over curricula that they believe teaches white kids that they are racist. None of this is actually happening.
So she says, none of this is actually happening. And from that same interview, if I could add, if anybody wants to go look at this for themselves, go look at that interview between Kimberly Crenshaw and Joy Reid. And Joy Reid leads off the interview. I listened to this today, so you could go fact check me if you want. One of the most recent interviews between Joy Reid and Kimberly Crenshaw on MSNBC. Joy Reid says, okay, I don't want to ask dumb questions, but I'm just going to do it for the sake of asking it, because a lot of people say this is the conservative or GOP go-to. CRT is Marxism. I don't want to sound dumb, but is CRT Marxism? And so she gives that question to Kimberly Crenshaw, and Kimberly Crenshaw never says no. And it took me like 6 times watching that video for it to click like, oh, shoot. She never, bro, said, no, it's not. It's not Marxism. She never said that. She gave a whole just beautiful, articulate response, and it hit me. She never denied it. And that's because obviously it is inspired. Marxism is one of its inspirations. Now, looking at this, I want to pull up this TikTok video because this is supposedly a teacher, and it sure does look like a school ceiling. So, and it's definitely a teacher. I mean, unless they're really good at faking stuff like this. The teacher gets the kids to say, hey guys, let's just go ahead and say the truth. White people have privilege over black people. Take a listen to this. And this ties into the critical race theory principle that we talked about earlier, white over color ascendancy, aka white privilege. If you teach kids in school white privilege, you are teaching them critical race theory. Take a listen.
Can we say white have power over black, please? Yeah. Okay, thanks.
It's crazy to me how she says please.
And that it was during slavery times. Because if we were really just saying during slavery times, we wouldn't have mass riots even happening today, right this minute, because of another black person being shot unwarranted by police without being much. Thought that was a taser. Oops. So we still have the binary of white have privilege over black.
And there it is. There's the CRT in the school.
Okay. I know you're like my toughest class because I don't know how to do that.
Real quick, I know I'm jumping in a lot, but I thought this would be funny. Like, imagine if the camera moved to the class. This would be so funny. And it was a white teacher talking to a whole bunch of black kids. You're my hardest class.
That would be an example of racism right there.
That would be so funny. Like, guys, you're my hardest class. I can't read you like my other classes.
So I
This
think like,
lady she's going in.
one thing she said there that is just ridiculous is saying that if it wasn't a real big issue with whites having superiority over blacks, there wouldn't be mass riots right now. So you can't use a riot as a justification for proving what you think you believe. That's not how it works. Just because people are rioting doesn't mean that they are correct to do so or that they have any real validation. And if you think I'm wrong, you can look over the past year. There have been a number of small-scale riots over police shootings before there was any details about the police shooting whatsoever. And then it comes out a day later that the guy was like had a gun or was trying to shoot someone, and then the riot stopped. So just because a riot happened, it doesn't mean that they were warranted in rioting. You can't use a riot as proof that you're correct. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it could easily be outrage because of a lack of self-control and patience. And if you buy the assumption that everything's racist and you see the visuals, the optics of black or brown getting shot or force used on them by somebody who's white, you immediately connect the two as, oh, it's racist. Let's go out there and burn some stuff. You know, and it checks my boxes. Like, I don't have to wait for the whole story. Let's just finish this off and then we'll move on to the next topic.
Guys, I really don't. All my other classes, I know how to read some of you. I don't know how to read all of you. And that's really frustrating as a
And it's really frustrating because I can't reach you. That's so funny. That is so funny to me. But yeah, man. Let me take some time real quick pause to just look at some of the comments. David Langley says 100% agree. He said that to William Gilbert. William Gilbert says the NAACP needs terms that ends with review of merits. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think what you're talking about is the fact that our society is a meritocracy. So it's more about your merits and what you offer and who you are as a person individually as to where you're going to end up in life. DB, hello, DB. Thank you, gentlemen. Keep up the good work. You are doing good. DB forgot to say good, but you are doing good. Thank you so much for that encouragement. Langley then goes on to say, inequality in our nation is not caused by racism. It's caused by lack of opportunity and poor choices. And I would just quickly add to that also is like, how do we know you lacked opportunity and it wasn't you botched your opportunity? Like, that's also a variable there too. But it's just one of like how Robin DiAngelo would say, well, if you point that out, that's just you affirming the structure again. Like, how do we know? How do we know you didn't blow your opportunity? Like, compared to you never had an opportunity. How are we really even going to know that? If I don't know your personal life and your personal story, how can a graph, how can an economist, how can a political pundit, how can a news story, I guess a news story could, but how can all these like ways of disseminating information say, oh yeah, you never had an opportunity? What if I did, but I blew it and I'm not telling you about it because I don't even perceive me as blowing it? You know, it's crazy how complex this conversation is, but it's racism.
Yeah, and I think kind of going off of that, not to get too deep into affirmative action, but one of my big issues with it is it's not an economic way to try and help people. It's effectively a racial way to try and, so like you're looking at people as a whole, and like Harvard is a really good example. Like if you look at their admissions process, Asian Americans are consistently rated lower than every other race when it comes to their likability or their social traits, which to me sounds horribly racist, but they're Asian, so I guess you can say that.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
But if instead of looking at race as a whole, they looked at the individual goals, like the economic where everyone came from effectively, and then they judge based on that, that would make a heck of a lot more sense, because then you'd actually look at people on an individual level. But the way that too often affirmative action does it is they look at race as a stand-in for economic level, because they say that they're correlated in some way, and sometimes that is true, but not necessarily. Because if you look at affirmative action, you could take someone who is white, who is extraordinarily poor, they worked really hard, they applied to Harvard, but they don't get in because they're white. And it could be that someone who's a person of color didn't come from that same background, they had more opportunity to begin with, and they get in because of their race. So like it's really, like you said, it's a really complicated situation. You can't just look at race and say this person is doing, like they're being held back more, so we need to give them a push up. That's not how it works. There are plenty of people who are in bad situations regardless of race.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's true. I mean, it's as if poverty only affects one group of people. I mean, it's as if me and my wife watched Hillbillyology for the first time like a month ago. And, you know, it's like there are really, really poor white people. I mean, one time on my channel, I decided to do like a little interview, you know, because we got small channels trying to switch up things, say, you know, what works, what doesn't work. I did an interview with a homeless white man. And I mean, the guy had been homeless for a long time. And if I remember correctly, it was like, I felt like he took responsibility for where he was at. Like, he was like, yep, my homelessness, like I screwed up a lot, you know, this and that. But in people who believe in critical race theory and social justice, I know that they know that there are white people who live in severe poverty. It's just they don't give it any merit. They don't really acknowledge it as sufficient because they believe the broader structure is still there. So yeah, even though a few white people, you know, live in poverty, that doesn't debunk our assertion of white privilege and anything like that. But you know, I really want to just real quick for everybody that's here, make sure you guys go over to another conservative commentator's channel and subscribe. Obviously, the man gives you value in his storytelling, in the way that he prepares. So make sure you guys, if you are a subscriber to me, make sure you guys are going over there to be a subscriber to him as well. Because, you know, we're, like the title says, we're just two young conservative men talking about these issues. So moving on to topic number 3, and we're going to have to run here because we got 11 minutes left. I was going to show the video, but I think the video is embedded in the article. So let's see if I could show it. It's from The Hill and the Virginia PTA. I know you guys saw this, you know, when was this? The 18th. So this is recent.
The Hansons are going wherever the open road takes them. And no matter
that real quick. Virginia PTA official resigns after "let them die" comments. Have you seen this?
I have. Well, I haven't seen the resignation, but I saw the original clip when it went around.
Okay, so yeah, so she resigned. Real quick, let's see if The Hill just cut straight to the point.
A top official from the Virginia.
Oh no, I got it in a YouTube link. But anyways, this is the, you know, this is the outcome. A top official from the Virginia Parent Teacher Association has resigned after being filmed saying "let them die" in reference to a group of people protesting the teaching of critical race theory. Okay. So if it's not,
I don't even know what that means. Like, let them die. Do people say that as you know, disses? Let them die.
Well, she did. So
weird.
I mean, to me, it was like, you know, she's like she was a little bit of an older lady, I think, and her, like, that might have been something that they said back in the day. Let them die. Like, okay. But one of the groups of people that she said let them die was if you're anti-inclusion, which is me all day, because what I say about inclusion, and it's not that I don't accept other people. If you want to be homosexual, I don't agree with it on a spiritual level. I think the Bible makes a very clear case about why you shouldn't participate in that sin. But if you as an individual want to live your life that way, I'm not like against you know what I'm saying? It's not like I'm against you, but I'm against your choices, I guess is the way you could say it. But she says if you're anti-inclusion, and they define inclusion as you let everybody do everything and you say good job about anything. Like everything that's happening, you say yes, that's inclusion. If you're anti-inclusion, let them die. It's crazy to me that we're at a point now where it's gotten so polarized that you have people that will stand in front of another group of people and say, let them die. This is probably worth looking at from the beginning. Good old Fox News, the polarizing political site.
As teachers and teachers' unions continue to push critical race theory in the classroom, parents have only a few options to fight back. And even when they do take a stand, they are met with threats like this. Watch.
Let's deny this off-key band of people that are anti-education, anti-teacher, anti-equity, anti-history, anti-racial reckoning.
So anti-equity, anti-racial reckoning, anti-teacher. Yeah. Okay. Oh, anti-history, because critical race theory is the right history. Okay. Let's continue.
Anti-opportunities, anti-health people, anti-diversity, anti-platform, anti-science.
I like that person.
I know.
Social justice, anti-healthcare, anti-worker, anti-LGBTQ+, anti-children, anti-healthcare, anti-worker, anti-environment, anti-emissions policy change, anti-inclusion, anti-live and let live people. Let them die. Don't let them.
Yeah.
Okay, because she just said anti-live and let live. So the opposite of live and let live is let them die, I guess. I don't know.
Say, man, that's a great attempt. I applaud your attempt. I listened to that. I was like, man, she's going in.
That was way too many. I think she might have said healthcare twice too. I swear I heard it twice.
She probably did. She probably did, but my goodness, I was blown back. Like, okay, and you're really gonna tell me Joy Reid and people who think like her are telling us critical race theory is not even in the school, like it's not even there. But the way that they do it is they say something, and I'll give them credit for this. It's, I would say, factually, like if we were to like fact check it, we would come back and say, oh yeah, it's true. Because what they say is, and the way that she asked the question to Kimberly Crenshaw, who was a critical race theorist, is there any K through 12 curriculum taught in K through 12 CRT curriculum being currently taught? Well, the answer broadly is no, because there's not any like public school curriculum. But is there critical race theory ideas banging at the door? Like we just listened to that TikTok video. Can we please say white people have privilege over black people? I mean, that's critical race theory right there. So it's like, okay, these teachers are now becoming political activists, and we're being told, you're blowing this way out of proportion.
Yeah, that's the I was actually watching a video, I think it was just yesterday, of Vosh. He was debating some guy about critical race theory. I don't know. He's a guy on the left who I don't agree with on most things, but I still listen and watch people I don't agree with. But they were talking about it being in schools, and the guy brought up the pathway to equitable math in Oregon. I don't know if you remember that.
Mm-hmm.
But it's essentially it was essentially like an elective course that every math teacher in, I think, the entire state of Oregon was invited to attend to learn how they can teach math in a more equitable way, which included things literally saying that white supremacy is like allowed in the classroom or propagated in the classroom when you expect students to get the right answer or to show their work. And so even if teachers aren't necessarily saying that directly to their students, if they're being taught these ideas, it's impossible to say they're not going to in some way affect their students and trickle down to the students. If you're being taught as a teacher through your higher ups that requiring students to show their work is in some way indicative of white supremacy, then that's going to impact how you teach your students. Even if you're not teaching them critical race theory directly, it's certainly applicable.
Yeah. And like abolishing the SAT and ACT. That's we don't want an objective measure anymore, because objective measures disproportionately affect people of color. I promise you I could be a politician at this point. Like I could say the lingo. Like it's crazy to me. Like you said, they're pushing the ideas, but it's not curriculum yet. It's just a teacher in the class talking about it. But the next step, if we as a nation and as conservatives and as parents who are like, no, I don't want my kid to be taught this advanced thing, not because I'm anti-intellectual or I'm opposed to different views. I believe that this is toxic to teach kids to view everything through the lens of race. Like if it wasn't for the parents and guys like Christopher Rufo and, even smaller people like us talking about this, there wouldn't be this big outrage against it, because they are so sneaky with how they sneak this stuff in. So, I say all that to say, for everybody who says that this isn't a big deal and we're creating a boogeyman or a straw man, I mean, I don't know how you could hold on to that point anymore after all of these things have been exposed.
Yeah, and I would say, like, if you don't believe that people actually think this way, then just go ahead and look at the book sales for something like White Fragility. Like, Robin DiAngelo has become presumably a millionaire. She sold significantly more than 1 million copies of her book, going around telling people that white people are racist. Like, you wouldn't sell that many books if people didn't want to buy and listen to it. So it's certainly not everybody, but as you pointed out, if people aren't pushing back, aren't recognizing it, it's just going to get worse.
Yeah, agree. Which is why what we're doing, some people have told me, yeah, you're just wasting your time in the culture war. It's going to mean nothing. And I'm like, I would just say I genuinely disagree. Now, I'm going to default to you because I have a couple minutes of grace from my wife. But if you want to do a hard stop at 10, we can, because we've covered a lot of ground. We still had two things to quickly talk about. One of them was the Robin DiAngelo video that you sent me. And then, the animated video about unequal opportunity. So I'll default to you. Do you want to tackle those two things? Tackle one of them?
I think we can probably end with the DiAngelo video because it's really short. It's like a 5-second clip or something.
Okay. Yeah. I'll move to the part that, and I know which part you sent me.
Yeah, I emailed it to you.
Got it.
Yeah, so to kind of introduce this is going to effectively just say what we've already said the entire time. So this is Robin DiAngelo making a video. I think it's on, is it the CBS YouTube channel or MSNBC? One of those. So like it's a YouTube video that she made, and it's talking about the myths that white people believe about race. And this is the one that really just stood out to me based on everything that we talked about tonight already.
Yeah. All right, I'll pull it up. And I believe, because when I pulled it up, it's an NBC clip.
Oh, is it NBC? Okay.
Yeah, and it's the whole clip, but I'm pretty sure what you are referencing is found right around here.
Yeah. So if we press play.
Yeah. So I'll let it play and then jump in when you want me to cut it off.
Sounds good.
You cannot talk about any other issue without talking about how race informs that issue.
Right there.
And if someone said,
Yeah. Okay.
Like, I don't see how you can. She says you literally can't talk about any other issue without bringing up race. And I fundamentally disagree with that.
Mhm.
That is making race the center of literally everything, which I don't think it is. And by doing that, you are perpetuating more of these issues. Because again, this leads you to say that any disparity whatsoever between race must be the result of discrimination against that race, which isn't accurate. So if you're focusing only on race for literally every issue, then you're going to see racism everywhere, even when it's not there. And that's I think a really big issue. It's not to say racism is nowhere and doesn't exist, but you can't say that everything you see that's bad is the result of racism.
Yeah. Yeah, I heard one of the police channels, I can't remember what his name is right now, but one of the things that stood out to me was he was cautioning people when they look at police activity, police interactions. He was like, guys, and this is if this matters at all, a black officer, he's like, we can't call everything racist, because if we call everything racist, we're going to mix things up that are racist and are not racist, and they're all the same at this point. Like, where it's just one conglomerate of racism. And it's like, no, we have to be able to differentiate between what is and what isn't. And clearly, if you walk around with this belief, you cannot talk about any other issue without talking about how race informs that issue. If that's the view, if that's the assumption, if that's the ideology you come to the table with, then you're going to conclude that everything is racist. And I mean, like everything we've talked about, everything's racist. And if you disagree with me, that's because you're racist. So last question for the night, and I'll let you hit this one, because I really wanted to hear your thoughts about this. I've heard this said through threads on YouTube. So I guess not heard. People have typed this to me, but they bring up this, I guess we could say, caveat or something. They say Robin DiAngelo is not even a critical race theorist. So like, you bring up Robin DiAngelo, she's not critical race theory. You're misrepresenting critical race theory. Or Ibram X. Kendi. So I guess I'm going into two people, but the question will remain the same. How are these people, like, what is your response to people who say Robin DiAngelo and Ibram X. Kendi are not critical race theorists? Because even I think Kendi will say, I'm not a critical race theorist, I'm a historian. What?
That's nonsense. Yeah. So what I would say, they may not have been trained in critical race theory, and they haven't, but I think that it's a lot more indicative of what people think critical race theory is, if nothing else, than what it actually is. So the reason for that is, we talk about critical race theory that brings up race front and center. The majority of people don't know Richard Delgado or Kimberly Crenshaw. They don't know the original critical race theorists. But you're going to find very few people who are following politics and the culture war who don't know DiAngelo and Ibram Kendi. So even if you don't think they are like the perfect example of critical race theory in any way, I would argue that they are the most notable example of race being front and center, which is a key tenet of critical race theory. So even if they don't exactly align with everything in critical race theory, there is certainly a good amount of overlap, and they're the ones who are by far the most well recognized and well known. So it would be ridiculous to not talk about Robin DiAngelo, who again has sold more than 1 million copies of her book, which for a nonfiction book is really impressive. She was on the Amazon bestseller week for like 50 or 60 weeks in a row. Yeah. You can't not talk about racial issues and critical race theory without bringing her up. So that'd be my response.
I like that. Man. I really do. Dude, I think tonight was a great show, a great episode. You definitely would bring a lot of value to your audience by doing live streams. For someone who hasn't done a live stream before, you articulated yourself very well, dude, and you bring a lot of value to the table when it comes to this is why we shouldn't believe this, and this. So I really appreciate you responding to me, getting back to me, because I've sent out a lot of feelers for like, hey, I want to collab with so-and-so, do a video, this, that, and you're the first one. So I would hope that in the future, we could reconnect and basically, recreate what we did tonight, talk about new topics, or just go further in depth about some of these same topics, because it seems to be critical race theory is going to be there for the next months, year. I mean, as long as people like Joy Reid are on TV and Joe Biden is saying Jim Crow, we have new century Jim Crow, I think critical race theory is going to, I know, is going to be a hot topic.
That's ridiculous.
But bro, I really do appreciate you taking your time to be with me tonight. Thank you to everyone who watched. Let me just remind you guys, if you already haven't, and of course, everybody up to this point has already done this, but like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so you're notified anytime I make a video. And make sure you guys go over to another conservative commentators channel and subscribe to that as well. I have a good playlist. If you're interested, check out my playlist, Critical Race Theory Exposed. You can find that on my channel. And last thing I'll say, for me personally, and I don't know if you want to, put your links out there, you could do that verbally. But if you want to support my channel, you could find me on Patreon at Conservative Republic. If you want to support me on PayPal or Cash App, you guys know what it is. I will put the links in the description below. And I would definitely encourage everybody who listens to this tonight and in the future to support another conservative commentator as well. Because like I've said, he brings a lot of value to this conversation. So thank you so much, man. I really do appreciate your time, your expertise, and I will be contacting you soon. And I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, me too. Thanks for having me.
All right, man. Hey, as always, guys, it was good seeing you. God bless. I will see you good people on the next one. Peace.
See ya.